You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 13th of August 2026 on Monocle Radio. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting to you live from Studio One here at Midori House in London. I'm Guy Delaunay. Coming up on today's programme, third parties don't have much of a track record in the United States. Can Taylor Greene and Carlson do anything to change that? Also, this city is making nightlife central to its strategy.
It has an impact in terms of quality of life, in terms of attractiveness of your city. So that leads to, attracting and retaining your talent, your workforce. It makes a city attractive. So people want to come and visit. They want to come and live in it.
Would you believe that's Canada's capital, Ottawa? We'll be hearing from its nighttime mayor. We'll also have Monocle's very own Fernando Augusto Pacheco with his global countdown. What's the pick of the pops, Fernando?
Ciao, Guy. Today on the Global Countdown, we look at the summer hits of Italy.
Ciao indeed. Plus, we'll have validation for Australia's designers as they gain recognition in the country's census. All that right here on The Briefing with me, Guy Delaunay. The history of third parties in the United States is long and generally pointless. Think Ross Perot's Reform Party, George Wallace's racist American Independent Party, or indeed Teddy Roosevelt's Bull Moose Party. They may have interfered in elections, but none of them came close to winning. The duopoly of the Republicans and Democrats has now endured for almost 2 centuries. But now, 2 of Donald Trump's most fervent former acolytes are talking about forming a new party. The former Congresswoman cum conspiracy theorist Marjorie Taylor Greene and media mouthpiece Tucker Carlson have both split from Trump, and now they want to do Maga properly. Heaven help us all. Can they succeed where Teddy Roosevelt failed? Here in the studio, we have the presenter of Monocle Radio's The Foreign Desk, Andrew Muller. Also joining us from Florida, appropriately enough, is Natasha Lindstadt, the Professor of Government at the University of Essex. First of all, Andrew, as we've got you right here, what's your betting on how likely this is to happen?
Who knows is a fairly stock answer to American politics over the last decade or so. I mean, they are running up against, or they would be running up against, those hurdles you outlined there, which is basically that, yes, third parties tend to have a fairly low ceiling in American elections. No third party candidate has won a state since 1968, when George Wallace, who you mentioned there, won 5 on a ticket in cahoots with the former bellicose US Air Force General Curtis Bombs Away LeMay. The thing is, though, even if they can't win the federal election, still less win any states, what they can do is attract an amount of money and attention to themselves, which they may store up for further endeavours. I am reminded at this point of having once spoken to a Republican contemporary of Tucker Carlson's who knew him quite well at one point, and I did ask, is Tucker Carlson's shtick at all sincere? Has the mask eaten the face, etc., etc.? And the reply they gave me was, you're already overthinking it. Tucker likes money and being on television.
Well, there we have it. Something like a certain occupant of the White House,
Indeed.
It seems, doesn't it? Natasha, you're in, can we call Florida Maga Central? I suppose we probably could, at least for the purposes of this item. How are they taking it there, these 2 former acolytes of Mr. Trump, talking about forming a new party? Are they cheering, or are they throwing rotten tomatoes?
I mean, it's hard to say how people are taking this. I think that we can look to some polling to get a little bit more of a broader view. And we see that there is very low levels of satisfaction for the Republican Democratic Party. And amongst independents, it's 70% dissatisfaction with the major parties. And a Gallup poll back in late 2025 showed that 62% of Americans think a third party is needed, but only 15% would be likely to vote for that party. So I think you have Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and a while back it was Elon Musk claiming he was going to start a third party. There's angst there, there's frustration, there is probably even a little bit of enthusiasm for something that looks different. But the issue is that the likelihood to actually vote for that third party is lower because you know that's really going to be a spoiled vote, that you're not really going to be helping matters. And the fact that it's just very difficult for each state to get this your candidate on a ballot. Each state has really strict and complex rules about this. And there's a lot of funding that's going to need to happen to make this happen as well. And the Republicans and the Democrats would have a big advantage. I mean, the best chance is that this third party movement will push, and it would likely have to be really the Republicans to accommodate more of the demands of the likes of Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I mean, is that purely their motivation, do we think, then? Because they know they're not... There are many things, but they're, as politicians go, and the machinations of politics, then this is not their first rodeo. They're not idealists. They know how these things work. So is that their motivation, then, to try and push things within the Republican Party rather than genuinely to start up an insurgent movement?
I mean, I think it's part of it, that Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene, they claim that they have convictions and they feel really strongly about no more wars, that they've had it with that. They've had it with the Epstein files. They've had it with the debt. I think this war in Iran, which is really unpopular in the U.S., with only really just like about a third of support, has really pushed things over the edge. But I wonder to what extent this is really personal. We saw in the court case against Fox News with Dominion voting systems that Tucker Carlson had said he just absolutely personally loathes Donald Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene has made it very clear that she can't stand him either. And I think some of this is just about riling him up, threatening have this third party is something that would really get on his nerves.
You've had some insight, Andrew, with the personalities involved. Is there a case now with these two are such strong personalities, I think we can use that word safely, might this be different?
A lot depends, I think, on whether Trump actually does run again. Should the good Lord spare him that long? I mean, obviously he can't, but he has not spoken or acted like somebody who has any intention of leaving office 2 years from now. I think there is a very non-zero chance he announces he's going to run anyway and defies anyone to stop him. In which case, I think that causes astonishing chaos, which anybody could end up benefiting from. But I suspect what's more likely is that Carlson and Greene here are positioning themselves as the heirs to Trump, and that announcing or toying with the idea of a third party will generate an amount of publicity and an amount of attention, and here we are talking about it. But someone like Carlson could well be thinking, looking ahead to 2028, well, why not me? And who better as a running mate?
Sounds sensible to you, Natasha?
That team running together, I mean, I don't even have words.
We could find a few.
I mean, as has already been said, it's hard to predict what's going to happen in American politics because it's gotten so wacky and crazy. I thought Tucker Carlson had said he wasn't planning on running, but of course people always say that and then they end up doing something differently. It was hard to predict what Taylor Greene was going to do because we thought she was going to become a media star because she had moved so far to the middle that she was even agreeing with more sort of progressive talk shows in the U.S. like The View. When she would come on, she was agreeing with the hosts and so forth. I think this is really more like a publicity thing at the moment than something real. But I think at the end of the day, they are getting under Trump's skin, and that I'm sure delights them.
Why do? I mean, we've seen insurgent parties succeed across Europe in recent decades. But the United States has proved extraordinarily resistant to any third-party efforts. Why is that? Why is the United States different, Andrew?
I think because once you've won a primary, and this is a tension that we always see in the two major parties anyway, you can win a primary by ramping up a base of enthusiasts, but then you actually do have to go out and get a certain amount of relatively normal people who don't usually pay much attention to politics to vote for you. The Republicans and the Democrats both have extremely extraordinary brand recognition because they've been a fact of American life for getting on for 200 years, both of them. And to build that brand recognition from the ground up over and over again is, as history has shown us, next to impossible, because you launch a third party or a third party campaign, it crashes and burns. Can you therefore be bothered to do it all again 4 years from now? Somebody else does under an entirely different name, and the cycle continues. It's not impossible. I mean, here in the United Kingdom, it was conventional wisdom until very recently that this was essentially a duopoly. If an election was held here tomorrow, we would discover that that is very much no longer the case. But it has proved obviously really, really tough to crack, and I'm not entirely convinced that Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene are going to be the people who crack it.
How do you feel about that, Natasha?
I would agree. They're not going to be the ones that can make this happen. I mean, I think that what happens is we just don't have that many people that go to vote. And those that do come to the polls end up choosing, the name that they recognize, rather than someone that they might not really be able to bet on or count on. So that makes it difficult for a third party to succeed. I wonder if a third party could have a chance in like a House race or more local politics. That's where we've seen some sort of traction there. But in my lifetime, the person that had the most success was Ross Perot. And he was really moderate. And you can't really say that about Marjorie Taylor Greene or Tucker Carlson.
Just a final thought, Guy. I would suspect that the people who would be most delighted by Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene taking a run at this in 2028 would be the Democratic Party, because
absolutely,
because the effect that third-party candidates often have is as spoilers. It is arguable that the entire course of the 21st century has been dictated by the decision of Ralph Nader to run as a third-party candidate in 2000. If you take his numbers out of Florida and move even a few of them over to Al Gore's column, Al Gore wins that election, and we're living in a very different world.
So, Democrats celebrating, but we've already buried the Taylor, Greene and Carlson party. Thank you very much for doing that, Andrew. That's Andrew Muller and Natasha Lindstadt, the Professor of Government at the University of Essex. Now here's Tom Webb with the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Guy. Germany has approved a draft law to give its intelligence agency sweeping new powers, rolling back post-war restrictions after 2 attacks in a single month exposed security gaps. Interior Minister Alexander Dobrindt called the overhaul a security revolution. South Korea's Incheon has become the world's busiest airport for international passengers for the first time, handling 38.4 million in the first half of the year. It overtook Heathrow, partly as the US-Iran war diverted passengers away from the Middle Eastern hubs. Bulgaria's Black Sea city of Burgas has been chosen to host next year's Eurovision Song Contest after the country won for the first time in May. This year's contest was overshadowed by 5 countries boycotting over Israel's offensive in Gaza, while Israel finished second following another strong public vote. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Guy.
Thank you very much indeed, Tom. Now then, here in the UK, you know your profession's made it when it becomes a worshipful company and you bask in the right to drive a flock of sheep across London Bridge. Australia is, of course, rather more straightforward. The key there is to make it into the census. And this year, for the first time, design professionals have been able to tick a specific category on the census form. Well, with me now is Grace Charlton, Monocle's Associate Editor for Design and Fashion. Are you, Grace, feeling personally vindicated that you now have a box on Australia's census form?
I'm really happy about this one because I actually believe that Australia has an incredible design scene, but for some reason it just flies under the radar. It's not respected. I mean, just last month, the Australian Design Centre in Sydney had to shut down because of lack of funds. So the hope is by sort of formalising design as a profession in the census, which takes place every 5 years, and it's this big sort of data collecting exercise, it'll sort of, give more awareness to design as a profession and hopefully, help policy making and all of that.
And I did say tick a box on the census form. There isn't just one box to tick, though, is there? There's multiple boxes for specific types of designer.
Yeah, we love protracted bureaucracy.
Nice.
92 different design occupations have been identified under 11 separate categories. This covers everything from like fashion designer and textiles to UX to being an illustrator to being a graphic designer. So yeah, it's.
I mean, is there a danger there that certain types of designer are wondering, what kind of designer am I exactly?
What if you're a multi-hyphenate?
Well, quite.
Yeah.
Can you tick multiple boxes?
I actually don't know. Is it done online or is it analog? I can't remember.
When you were saying, though, you think that the profession deserves greater recognition in Australia. This is a change. It's bureaucracy. Bureaucracy needs a serious kick in the hindquarters to get itself going. Who was applying that boot?
I think it was a few. There was this like lobbying group that helped it, but I would like to think it was also grassroots. I mean, Australia's got an incredible design scene. Like I said, this is a land of Mark Newson, of the Dolphin Torch, of incredible like contemporary designers like Studio Henry Wilson. I really hope this can sort of help and elevate the profile of Australian design.
Now, we've been making a bit of a joke. Well, I've been making a bit of a joke about this. We haven't. You've been very, straightforward and absolutely journalistic about this, Grace. I was making this comment about being able to drive a flock of sheep over London Bridge, which, of course, was what you can do if you're a member of one of the livery companies here in the UK. And people... my brother-in-law's a member of the Worshipful Company of Marketers.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and he feels very good about himself because of this. Rather too smug. But besides making the designers feel good about themselves, like I've got a box now to tick on the census, do you think this will have a real impact going forward?
I really hope it helps sort of attract government funding. I was sort of thinking, this is when, I did a politics degree, which may or may not have been useless. But we did learn about Foucault and a sort of Foucauldian approach to data gathering, and information is power, knowledge is power. If you can sort of prove that there are X number of designers, to the government, maybe they would give you money and support, and then the Australian Design Centre in Sydney wouldn't be shutting down right now. So I really... say what you want about Michel Foucault. I'll say his writing is really dry, but he has a point in the sense that if you can just sort of prove through hard data that something is there, it's more likely to get attention, funding, profile, all of it.
I'd imagine you have to be very careful who you say Foucault to in Australia. But anyway, thank you very much, Grace. That's Grace Charlton, Monocle's Associate Editor for Design and Fashion. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. You're back with The Briefing on Monocle Radio. Night owls in places like Berlin and Amsterdam might take their vibrant atmospheres for granted, but what goes on behind the scenes to make a city fun at dusk? Quite a bit of bureaucracy, as it turns out, with municipalities worldwide pushing to enhance their nighttime governance. Monocle's Kayleigh Martin spoke with Mathieu Grandin, Ottawa's nightlife commissioner, about how cities find their identity, their strategy, and most importantly, their fun. And Kayleigh began by asking Grandin how he envisioned transforming Canada's capital's nightlife when he began his role in 2024.
Well, obviously, Ottawa is a bit sandwiched between the bigger brother and sisters that are Montreal and Toronto, and there's often very unfair comparisons to these bigger cities. So, I'd say it's a mid-sized cities that's still a bit looking for its identity in terms of nightlife, and that's what the challenge was, and that's what excited me to come and be able to bring together that community, that business and artistic community, and figure out how to position Ottawa as a nightlife destination, nightlife city, so that it stands out between those two bigger brothers and sisters.
And sandwiched in between those bigger brothers and sisters, it's easy to look for inspiration, just a bit east and just a bit southwest of Ottawa in Toronto and Montreal. But where else did you draw inspiration from when looking to enhance the nighttime economy in the city?
To me, internationally, the best practices right now in terms of nighttime economy and nighttime governance really come from the government of New South Wales in Australia. They're the only other place in the world that have a nightlife commissioner, a nighttime economy, 24-hour economy commissioner. He's got a staff of 20 and a $40 million budget. It's at the state level, so it's not at the municipal level. So I think the government there has done tremendous work in the last 3-4 years, trying to reposition position Sydney as a nightlife destination and empowering night workers and coming out with policies that are, innovating and groundbreaking. So that's really one place that I look out for. And also the team at 24 Hour London are doing great work too. So I know you're in London. I'm going to give them a little shout out.
And it's not as simple as just open everything all hours of the night, let people do whatever they want across the city. There are, like you said, policy decisions that have to be made. What were some of the earliest steps that you made when entering this role?
Well, first of all, we needed to review the policy and the bylaw framework that governs nighttime activities. And historically, especially in North America, these activities have been overlooked or stigmatized even sometimes. So we wanted to see which of those policies and bylaws were barriers to the growth of the sector. So we revised a bit of the noise bylaw. We revised how we allowed food trucks to, come into public space and at festivals. We just change our late night dance license so that it's, on an annual basis instead of an event to event basis to provide more flexibility. So revising that framework has been a priority. Bringing together everyone through the Nightlife Council, which is our department-led working group, so that there's a sense of unity and that we're pushing in the same direction. And this is not just the effort of one advocate, the Nightlife Commissioner, but it's a community effort pushing in the same direction, and building capacity. So that means, growing our existing activities and organizations, but also developing new ones so that, we have more programming to offer to residents and visitors.
And as a former Ottawa resident myself, I've obviously heard the jabs about the city being boring when you compare it to cities like Toronto and Montreal. But what can an elevated nighttime atmosphere do for a city like Ottawa?
Well, I think, it has an impact in terms of quality of life, in terms of attractiveness of your city. So that leads to, attracting and retaining your talent, your workforce. It makes a city attractive. So people want to come and visit. They want to come and live in it. Part of my position, the rationale behind it was back 10 years ago, the Economic Development Services surveyed the tech sector here in Ottawa. We have a huge tech sector. That's the second biggest after Silicon Valley in North America. And their biggest barrier was to attract and retain their highly mobile and qualified workforce, because they could work in London, Toronto, or Montreal, and they wouldn't pick Ottawa right off the bat. So how do we make that city more interesting? So they're going to look at, do we have good restaurants? Is my favorite artist going to come and perform there? These are all things that, make the city attractive. And this is part of my work.
Yeah, and we spoke about how you drew inspiration from the Nightlife Commissioner in New South Wales, and you look to places like London, maybe draw inspiration from other European cities that have nightmares as well. When you started your role, with the experience you have, but as well as drawing inspiration from other cities and their nighttime economies, what are some things that you wish you knew when you started off as a Nightlife Commissioner?
You have to be very patient. You have to build a lot of contacts and build your network internally, because these are big corporations. We have 17,000 employees at the City of Ottawa, multiple departments, and to coordinate and de-silo all these services takes time, and it takes effort, it takes relationships. So that's the big part of what the work is about. It's coordinating all these efforts and bringing more awareness to what I call the nightlife, building that nightlife reflex in those other departments, so that it doesn't rely solely on the shoulders of one person, one internal advocate, but it becomes a whole of government approach.
And if you were in a room with some of those other people in the nightlife economy, atmosphere, and scene across the world, what are some lessons that you'd like to share, whether it is that patience or some other things too?
I think in many parts of the world, the nightlife industry and the nighttime industry is not well organized enough. We need more industry association, more lobbies to help policymakers like me build their business case and advocate for them. I think that's a big part of the job, and where we've seen it, succeed, such as in London or in Australia, it's because the industry was behind those efforts and lobbied for it and pushed for it.
And that was the Nightlife Commissioner of Ottawa, Mathieu Grandin, speaking to Monocle's Nkele Martin. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. It's 12:24 here in London, and finally, on today's edition of The Briefing, we're getting into the groove because it's time for a sneak peek at the global countdown. Monocle's senior correspondent, Fernando Augusto Pacheco, is here. Come on, Fernando, wow us with some sounds.
I will, and we're heading to Italy, which is perfect because they do like a summer hit there.
Eccellente.
They even have a name for it, the Tormentones, you know?
Ooh.
So do you want to know what are their Tormentones this year?
Do I have a choice?
You don't have a choice. We're going to start on a very good note, and number 5, because this song is an ode to the south of Italy, to southern Italy. This is Serena Brancale, Levante and Elia with Al mio paese.
Mi manchi ma domani torno a casa e finalmente sto con te. Cominciano le ferie quando torno al mio paese, le madonne nelle chiese quando torno al mio paese.
First of all, spoiler here, this song is actually on the Monocle Radio playlist, I have to say. Because I do follow the Italian charts. And this song is called, well, translating is like In My Hometown. So she says there, my holiday begins when I return to my hometown.
I thought she said Stockholm.
She didn't say Stockholm, but she did say, I do think she said Bari, Calabria, you know, all those beautiful places. No, maybe she's actually...
I'm terrible at spotting language.
Running away from
lyrics,
Stockholm.
even in English. So, you know, in Italian, it's asking a lot.
But it's a great song. It's a good start, no?
Yes, I was grooving. You were grooving.
Number 4, a little bit of less of a groove. This is more of a ballad. It's a love song, but you know about love songs. They can be a little bit sad and melancholic at times. This is the Italian rapper from Naples, Geolier, with Canzone d'amore, love song.
It doesn't make me want to kill, which many ballads do.
Exactly. I mean, so yeah, there's some sadness in the story, of course, a little bit about love break, but there's a nice beat there. And this guy is huge. And I have to tell you, he just performed a few sold-out shows in Naples at the stadium. There's something happening in Naples. The music scene there is very exciting, especially when it comes to hip-hop. I was just talking to my colleague Anita, Italian-American, and she did say, Fernando, it's true. There is something in Naples. There's a lot of new artists coming out.
So literally football stadium level gig?
Oh, yes.
My goodness.
Big. And this song has been released, I believe, in January, February, and it's still in the charts. It's been a massive hit across Italy.
Well, what have you got for us next?
Let's talk about some obsession here. Number 3, we have a more Italian hip-hop with Samurai J and Vito Salamanca with Ossessione, Obsession.
Ossessione, stanotte ritorni qui al centro delle mie fantasie. Siamo il solo di venerdì, bailando contigo así. Per un'ora ti sento mia, non è amore, è una malattia. Questo maledetto film.
Some distinctly Latin rhythms there.
Lots of Latin rhythms. That's exactly what I was going to say. Very much so. And you can see that in the Italian charts. I mean, there's still number 2 and 1 to come. So you understand the prevalence of those Latin sounds. And this song, apparently, it's the Italian song with the most consecutive weeks and number 1 in the Italian charts. Of course, now it's number 3. But, you know, it did very well in the weeks
And
before.
was everybody aware of it? Because I was reading recently that, Sam Fender and Olivia Dean have been number 1 for 19 weeks, which is record-breaking here in the UK. But I read an article saying that lots of people hadn't even heard the song.
Well, you know what I would tell to those people? That they should be more in tune with society because, you know, it's there, you know. Even if you go to a Tesco here in the supermarket, it's been played. You know, it's not my favorite song, but I've heard that. But it's been a little bit of a controversy here in the UK. I wonder if our Italian listeners, if they're listening, let me know about Ossessione. Talking about Latin rhythms, Guy, this is cool because actually, and you know, I'm Brazilian, of course. We have a Brazilian singer, number 2. It's Anitta, and the cool thing about Anitta, she sings in Spanish, English, Italian, and of course Portuguese. And this song she performs together with Fred de Palma and Emis Killer. But this song is pure merengue. Let's have a listen. La testa gira, my head is spinning.
La festa continua, 200 all'ora. Guida sportiva, sembra un plan.
La testa gira, ai 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 ai,
It's so catchy, right?
You were joining in.
Yes, La Testa Gira. My head is spinning a little bit actually right now. But that's the kind of the earworm you want to listen in the summer, right?
I wondered, with all those languages she speaks, whether she was going to try and break. I think it was Nena Cherry and Youssou N'Dour hold the record for the number of languages in a number one hit. With 7 seconds. But, she could have gone for it there.
She got a gun for it. But she said in an interview, because of course she's trying really hard for an international career, but she said that she misses Brazil and now she's kind of going back to focus a little bit on Brazil.
Well, fair enough. I mean, surely it's going to be Brazil's moment again. I mean, in the 60s and 70s, Brazil had an enormous international moment. Why not again?
Exactly. Perhaps like Colombia, taking us to number one. a nice segue here. I mean, this song, my God, Shakira is the queen of the World Cup. It's undeniable. But it's interesting that the World Cup is finished and it's still the most played song worldwide, not just in Italy, even in the United States, across Europe, across Asia. I mean, this song is ridiculously catchy. And I'm a fan of Shakira. I did say in the past...
Her hips don't lie.
Her hips don't lie, and our hips will not lie after listening to this song. And number one is Shakira and Burna Boy with Die Die.
Feel it, got everything you need it. Now bring it like you mean it. Just like you mean it. Dale, olvida lo que vale. Juega como tú sabes. Como tú sabes. And it's just contagious, you know.
And it never fails.
She knows what works, you know.
Who would have thought that Shakira, of all people, would corner the football song market?
Yes, and she's been doing for a few years now.
Yeah, this is right. From 2010 onwards, really.
Gosh. And Waka Waka, of course, is still the all-time number one. But if you look at the numbers of Die Die, I mean, it's a close, second for sure.
I bet she does it just to... Gerard Piqué was at the World Cup, wasn't he? Watching on.
Who cares about Gerard Piqué, right? It was all about Shakira.
And when will we be hearing this countdown in full, Fernando?
Well, we'll be listening to the Global Countdown, of course. It's a standalone show, and I think people should be listening to the one from last week as well, where we had 5 songs for the summer.
Bless you for that. We should all be tuning in. And where can we find it?
You can go to monocle.com or to Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Excellent. I'm glad we've got all the information on that. That was Monocle's senior correspondent, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. And that is all for this edition of The Briefing. It was produced by Tom Webb, our researcher was Kayle Martin, and our studio manager was Elliot Greenfield. The Briefing is back at the same time tomorrow. I'm Guy Delaunay. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.